All right. How's everybody doing today? Hotep. Hey, this is Michael. I'm Hotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022, and we are live. All right, I wanted to come on and talk for a short period of time. I wanted to give an overview of a preview of the online class that I teach on Wednesdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. But also, I wanted to talk about this topic, and we deal with this in my 10-week online class. I wanted to deal with this topic of African empires and African civilizations that Europeans tried to claim as their own. And in some cases, Arabs tried to claim it as their own as well. And this goes beyond Kemet. This goes beyond Egypt. Egypt is one of them. That's probably the most prominent. But there are others as well. And I posted a video on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Some of you all saw this video. It got about 1,500 likes. And it deals with this white archaeologist who finds out that the ancient Africans, this one here is dealing with Nubia. He finds out that the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and the Nubians were Black Africans, and he's shocked. Okay, I'm gonna show you that here in just a minute. Okay, but we do thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place in this 10-week class. So we'll give you some information how you could register for it and how you could join us in class today at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But you're going to learn a lot in this 10-week online course. So if we look at some of these African empires that Europeans tried to claim as their own, the first one that we'll look at would be that of Nubia. Okay, the first one would be Nubia, and or Ta-Hesi or Ta-Seti. Okay, and Nubia exists from about 4,500 BCE, before the Common Era, to 500 AD. Okay, and somebody E. Verdi says South Sudan like the Egyptian. Yeah, so you're looking at the lower portion of Kemet or Egypt and the upper portion of the Sudan. This is the area that was Nubia. Okay, you're going to have a larger region that's going to be Kush. That's basically a region as opposed to a country. Okay, so let's look at this here, and I'll post. We have information here in the thread of the broadcast to register for the class. Also visit our website, TheAFricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And you can register for the class right now. Okay, and I'll post the information here on the thread of the broadcast as well. The class is on sale $60, regularly $130. It's on sale for a limited time only. Okay, so ancient Nubia or Ta-Seti, also known as Kush, was a region along the Nile River, located in northern Sudan and southern Egypt. Located in northern Sudan and southern Egypt, or Kemet. It was home to some of Africa's earliest kingdoms, known for rich deposits of gold. Nubia was a major trading port for luxury goods that came from sub-Saharan Africa, such as incense, ivory, and ebony. Now, the first monarchy of recorded history was established in Nubia. The Nubians were also known for their exceptional archery skills. Okay, their exceptional archery skills that provided the military strength for their rulers. Okay, so one of the names of Nubia is also land of the bow. Okay, land of the bow. This is what Ta-Seti means. Land of the bow. You'll also hear it referred to as Ta-Nehisi as well. The southern portion is Ta-Nehisi, if I remember correctly, Ta-Nehisi. Now, kings of Nubia ultimately conquered and ruled Egypt for about 100 years, for about 1 century. Monuments still stand in modern Kemet, or modern Egypt and Sudan, at the sites where Nubian rulers built cities, temples, and royal pyramids. Now, in the 1800s, the Western world's interest in Nubia was awakened by the discovery of the ancient empire's monuments, which were reported almost simultaneously by individual British, French, and American explorers. Many of them found it difficult to credit indigenous Africans for building such a civilization. Now, this is the same thing that we found with ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Europeans found it hard to ascribe the pyramids and the temples to indigenous Black African people. All right. And one of the theories, and if you read Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder, one of the we use in the 10-week online class. I'm around, we're going to do like 11 to 12 weeks because some sessions I had to cut short because of my work schedule. One of the theories was from these European archaeologists and scientists, things like this. One of the theories was that the ancient Egyptians were brown-skinned Caucasians. This is one of the theories that they had, over the years. They said that they were brown-skinned Caucasians. They tried to classify them as anything but being Black African, but being Negro. Okay, they said no. They maybe they're Semites, maybe they're descended from these people, maybe they're brown-skinned Caucasians, anything but Black Africans. Okay, now, so many of these scientists and archaeologists found it difficult to credit indigenous Africans for building such a civilization. Then you had some idiots who said, "Oh, well, maybe aliens built the pyramids because we they can't figure this out. So maybe aliens built the pyramids." Now, there are twice as many pyramids in the Sudan as there are in Egypt. There are twice as many pyramids in the Sudan as there are in Egypt. Okay. The Only Child said there is a study guide to Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. That is true. I have the study guide also. Okay. Browder's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him a number of times on the African History Network show. And this would be the study guide for Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. I have that as well. Okay. All right. On class also. I talked to Browder about he went to he was speaking at an educational summit in South Africa because I want to do another interview with him. Okay, now let's continue here. Okay, so I showed this video. I shared this video on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, a couple of days ago, and people have been watching it. They've been going crazy over it. It's gotten over 1,500 likes, and I see other people have been sharing our video, and other Facebook platforms have been sharing the video as well. Okay, so remember, we were one of the first ones to share it. But in this video here, you have this European scientist, all right, and he's disappointed when he finds out that ancient Egyptian pharaohs were Black Africans. He's disappointed. And when I posted this on our Facebook page, I said, who the hell did he expect the ancient Egyptians to be? Brown-skinned Caucasians? Because this is the information that has been put forth, but the same thing applies to Nubia because these are cousins. Okay, these are cousins. The same thing applies. And then when you see movies like Cleopatra starring Elizabeth Taylor, what this does is this colonizes people's minds, not just Europeans, but also African people, African Americans. It colonizes our minds. It makes us think that these historical figures were Europeans, and they were not. This is the problem every Easter when people sit up and watch the Ten Commandments starring Yul Brynner as Ramses, okay? The Egyptian pharaoh, the Kemetic pharaoh. Ramses wasn't no European. He was African. That's a whole, I've done a whole presentation dealing with the history of Easter. We did this, we did it earlier this year. We did it April, around Easter time, 2022, to get deep into it and deal with the Exodus story as well. Okay, because the Exodus story is problematic. All right. So you trying to tell me, I'm gonna show this video in just a second, but hold on. You trying to tell me that 2 million people, it was supposed to be 2 million people that exited out of Kemet, out of Egypt. Okay. You trying to tell me that 2 million Hebrews or Jews, or however you want to describe them, 2 million of them wandered in the desert for 40 years. You're trying to tell me 2 million of them wandered in the desert for 40 years. Where did they get water from for 2 million people for 40 years in the desert? What did they eat in the desert? 2 million people for 40 years. Now, I can hear some people right now complaining and things like this. So let me show you. I want to show you this source for you to go research this yourself. Documentation ends all conversation. You don't have to worry. I say go research this yourself. Okay. Now, this article here, and this was part of my research and part of the presentation I did earlier in the year when we dealt with Easter and the Exodus and all that history. Okay. This is from history.com, which is the official website of the History Channel. This is an article called Passover. Okay. So article called Passover. Go read this entire article. All right. And it goes through and deals with the biblical story of Easter and the Israelites' departure from ancient Egypt and all this that's in the Bible, that's in the Helios Biblos, the Sun book. Helios is in reference to sun, S-U-N, the Helios Biblos. So it goes through and talks about the Passover story, which is really a story about killing African male children. Okay. It was supposed to be all the African male children under 2 years old. These weren't Europeans they were killing. These weren't European children they were killing. Who were they killing? African children. Okay. So it goes through and talks about the 10 plagues and all of that we read, that we learn about in Sunday school. For me, it was catechism class because I grew up Catholic. So we went to catechism school on Saturday as opposed to Sunday school on Sunday. Okay. Then it talks about according to the Bible and things like this. Then it gets to a portion. Then it gets to this part right here. Questions of historical accuracy. Questions of historical accuracy. Okay. Now, we have to understand this. World history is in world history books. Religious literature is in religious literature books. Okay. World history and religious literature are not the same thing. And this is where a lot of our people get confused. Now, I may say some things that are outside of the circumference of your own awareness. Just because you disagree with them or don't like them or haven't heard them before does not mean that they are not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. Okay. And I learned this from one of my teachers, Dr. Ray Hagins. And I usually have this in my presentations, especially, you know, when I do presentations, and especially when I do presentations in person, and I may be dealing with a mixed audience, may have different races in the audience, things like this. Okay. So I usually have people put their fingers together to form a circle. And I usually say something like this. The space inside this circle represents my realm of knowledge. Everything that I think I know about whatever I think I know is represented within the circumference of this circle. I must keep in mind that there are still things to know that exist outside the circumference of my own awareness. So the reason why I say this is because oftentimes when people hear something that contradicts what they believe or what they think they know, they automatically reject it without doing any research to determine the validity of the new information that they're learning. And they usually don't use that same level of scrutiny to analyze, critique, or evaluate what it is they believe or what they think they know. So just because you know everything that what you know does not mean you know everything there is to know about what you know. There's still things that exist outside the circumference of your own awareness. Okay, so I say that to say this here. So this section here of this article from history.com, history.com is the official website of the History Channel. In the article called Passover, it says questions of historical accuracy. Questions of historical accuracy. And it says for centuries, scholars have been debating the details and historical merit of the events commemorated during the Passover holiday. Okay, for centuries, scholars have been debating the details and historical merit of the events commemorated during the Passover holiday. Despite numerous attempts, historians and archaeologists have failed to corroborate the tale of the Jews' enslavement in and mass exodus from Egypt. Okay, they have failed to corroborate the tale of the Jews' enslavement in Egypt and their mass exodus from Egypt. Okay, now this is not anti-Semitic. This is not being against anybody. This is understanding history. Okay, go read this article. This is not me saying this. This is what the History Channel is telling you. Now, they go on to say, although the ancient Egyptians kept thorough records, no mention is made of an Israelite community within their midst or any calamities resembling the 10 biblical plagues. There is also no evidence of large encampments in the Sinai Peninsula, the fabled site of the Jews wandering, or any sudden fluctuation in Israel's archaeological record that would indicate the departure and return of a large population. You realize that 2 million people or 1.5 million or a million people wandered around in the desert for 40 years or left a country and then went to another country. You understand that would throw off the ecology of that country, and it will leave archaeological remnants behind, archaeological evidence. Stuff you can't just write something in the history and don't realize that people in history leave archaeological footprints. Okay, this stuff doesn't happen. It goes on to say a handful of scholars, including the first century Jewish historian Josephus, which would be spelled with the Y because the letter J wasn't created in 1630 AD, have suggested a link between the Israelites and the Hyksos, a mysterious Semitic people, possibly from Canaan, who controlled Lower Egypt for more than 100 years before their expulsion during the 16th century BCE, before the Common Era. Most modern academics, however, have dismissed this theory due to chronological conflicts and a lack of similarity between the two cultures. Okay, so read this full article. Don't just read the part about question of historical accuracy. Read that definitely, because this gets left out when people sit up and watch the 10 Commandments every Easter. Okay, this gets left out of the conversation. But read that full article from history.com. Okay, now I want to go back to PowerPoint presentation. And these are some slides from the class that I teach also, okay? The 10-week online class, teaching Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade. And we normally teach this class on Wednesday, 7 p.m. To 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm teaching the class at our online school tonight, so you can register for the full course. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded, so you can go back and watch the classes anytime. A year from now, 2 years from now, you can watch the entire class. Okay, so here's what happened with this scientist who didn't know that ancient Egyptian pharaohs were Africans. Let's go here. I'm gonna get this to play. Just a second here. Okay, let's see. Why isn't this? Hold on. I may have to go to the video on my Facebook page for it to play. There is a... Okay, let's do it this way. We'll just pull up on my Facebook page. Hold on.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shemai's ethnicity.
Well,
okay, here, let's play it. Let's play it off of Facebook.
they have just told me that Shemai had Nubian.
Let me see, let's back this up.
Feature, which means that the ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shemai's closely, the thickness of his bone and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type, and in this sense, Shemai is representing the society of the frontier, in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shemai was Egyptian.
Okay. All right. So what he said that they thought that the ancient Egyptians were Mediterranean. This is another way they try to obfuscate the history. Okay, so they try to say the ancient Egyptians were Mediterranean, brown-skinned Caucasians, anything but black Africans. All right, I'm going to play this again. Scientists disappointed when he finds out that the ancient Egyptian pharaohs were black Africans, and they mentioned Nubia in here as well. Okay, so let me pull this back up, and I tried this. It played in PowerPoint. It played in PowerPoint before I broadcast when I was testing everything out, but it won't play now. Okay, let's see. Let's go to this here. All right, let's try to play this. I hate these videos and
well, they have just told.
scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shemai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shemai had a Nubian feature, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shemai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bone and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type, and in this sense, Shemai is representing the society of the frontier, in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shemai was Egyptian.
All right. Yeah. So he says he has to admit Shemai was Egyptian. He said it doesn't matter the color of your skin, blah blah blah. Okay. He said they thought the Egyptian elite were Mediterranean type. Just more nonsense. Okay, so he got a real wake up call with that scientific discovery. Now, during the 1840s, German Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius, who lived from 1810 to 1884, asserted confidently that the Greek term Ethiopian, when referring to the ancient civilized people of Kush, did not apply to Negroes. He said it did not apply to Negroes, but was used to describe reddish-skinned people closely related to the Egyptians who, quote, belong to the Caucasian race, end quote. Okay, so they're trying to ascribe the Egyptians and Nubians, things like this. They're trying to ascribe them to the Caucasian race and describe them as reddish-skinned people. Okay. They also said that the Egyptians were brown-skinned Caucasians. Brown-skinned Caucasians. Now, when you, historically, like in ancient Kemet, but also we see this in Ethiopia, Somalia. A lot of them didn't have broad noses and thick lips. Some of them had more aquiline features, narrow noses, thinner lips, some of them, okay? These were still Black Africans. So we see all these mental gymnastics that take place with people who don't want to admit that one of the greatest civilizations in history was created by Black African people. They don't want to deal with that. All right. And we see the same thing with Nubia. Okay. We see the same thing with Carthage, where you have Hannibal Barca and the Carthaginians. Okay. How's everybody doing? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Also, be sure to register for the 10-week online class that I teach on Wednesday. Alpha, understanding the slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we teach this on Wednesday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., about 9 p.m. or so, Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. Okay, so we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Just click right here and register here to register. Classes on sale $60, regularly $130. So and this is one of the topics that we deal with in the class, African empires that Europeans try to claim as their own. Now on Tuesdays, I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We had a great class yesterday. We're going to do part 2 of that coming up in the next few days. This class is on sale $60 as well. We start in the 1800 with the 1800 census, and then we look at the Louisiana Purchase of 1803 and the Haitian Revolution, because those two events are related. And we go through our history chronologically and see what leads up to the Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow era, Great Migration, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement. We also have a bundle pack here of both classes. You can get both classes right now for a very limited time, only for $100 as over $300 value, because there's bonus content that you get. So click here, register here for that. And if you've taken any of my online classes in the past, you can email me through the website, click on Contact the African History Network, email me, and you'll get a 50% discount, or email us at AHNShow at TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com, AHNShow at TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com. And I just posted the link here to register for the classes. These courses make a great gift also. You can register somebody else if you want to, and you can use these for your children. I would say the content is PG-13. You can use these for your children as well. Okay, let's continue here. So during the 1840s, German Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius asserted confidently that the Greek term Ethiopian, when referring to the ancient civilized people of Kush, did not apply to Negroes, but was used to describe reddish-skinned people closely related to the Egyptians, who belonged to the Caucasian race. All right, let's continue. Now, Nubia was, in recorded history, is the first recorded monarch, okay, or monarchy. Now, ancient Egypt is the first major civilization in Africa for which records are abundant. It was not, however, Africa's first kingdom. And we know that Nubia is the mother of Kemet. Ta-Seti is the mother of ancient Kemet. The grandmother of Kemet would be Abyssinia or Ethiopia, okay, because civilization flows up the Nile River. So the grandmother is Abyssinia or Ethiopia. Nubia is the mother, and then you have ancient Kemet. So there was an article from the New York Times from March 1st, 1979. March 1st, 1979, and I read the article today. I've seen excerpts of the article previously, but I read the article in its entirety today. A March 1st, 1979 article from the New York Times. It was a front page article written by journalist Boyce Rensberger, R-E-N-S-B-E-R-G-E-R, Rensberger, reported, quote, evidence of the oldest recognizable monarchy in human history, preceding the rise of the earliest Egyptian kings by several generations, has been discovered in artifacts from ancient Nubia. Has been discovered in artifacts from ancient Nubia, or Ta-Seti. The artifacts, including hundreds of fragments of pottery, jewelry, stone vessels, and ceremonial objects, such as incense burners, were initially recovered from the Custul, Q-U-S-T-U-L, cemetery by Keith C. Seale, S-E-E-L-E, a professor at the University of Chicago. Now, when we look at the definition of a monarchy, so we'll consult Encyclopedia Britannica for this, Britannica.com. A monarchy is a political system based upon the undivided sovereignty or rule of a single person, the undivided sovereignty or rule of a single person. The term applies to states in which supreme authority is vested in the monarch, an individual ruler who functions as the head of state and who achieves his or her position through heredity. They inherit it. They inherit it. Okay. Most monarchies allow only male succession, usually from father to son. Okay, but in Nubia, we saw a number of African queens. in Nubia also. All right. Okay, let's continue. Also, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. It helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. We have the information on the homepage of our website as well. If we look some more at this article that was cited from March 1st, 1979, it's a pretty interesting article. There have been advances made. There have been more archaeological discoveries that have come out since then. But it's interesting what they were saying in 1979. I was 8 years old in 1979, by the way, as well. Ancient Nubian artifacts yield evidence of earliest monarchy. This is from the New York Times, March 1st, 1979. Evidence of the oldest recognizable monarchy in human history, preceding the rise of the earliest Egyptian kings by several generations, has been discovered in artifacts from ancient Nubia in Africa. Until now, it had been assumed that at that time, the ancient Nubian culture, which existed in what is now southern Sudan and southern Egypt, had not advanced beyond a collection of scattered tribal clans and chiefdoms. The existence of rule by kings indicates a more advanced form of political organization in which many chiefdoms are united under a more powerful and wealthier ruler. The discovery is expected to stimulate a new appraisal of the origins of civilization in Africa, raising the question of to what extent later Egyptian culture may have derived its advanced political structure from the Nubians. The various symbols of Nubian royalty that have been found are the same as those associated in later times with Egyptian kings or Egyptian pharaohs or the Nasubitis. The discovery is expected to stimulate a new appraisal of the origins of African civilization and raising questions of two. Okay, that's a duplicative. The new findings suggest that ancient Nubians may have reached this stage of political development as long ago as 3300 BCE, before the Common Era, or BC, several generations before the earliest documented Egyptian king or pharaoh or Nasubiti. Now, the discovery is based on study of artifacts from ancient tombs excavated 15 years ago. Okay, so that'll go back to like 1964 or so, because this article's from 1979, 15 years ago, in an 64, 65, in an international effort to rescue archaeological deposits before the rising waters of the Aswan Dam covered them. Okay, so check out this article here from the New York Times, March 1st, 1979. Ancient Nubian artifacts yield evidence of earliest monarchy. Okay, now another African empire that Europeans try to claim as their own, all right, is that of Carthage. And we'll talk about Carthage in today's class. And when you register for the class, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we'll post a link here again so you can register for the course. And we also have the bundle pack as well. We get both classes for $100. This over $300 value. because today we'll talk about the Punic Wars and Hannibal Barca and the Battle of Cannae. Okay, so there was a on the History Channel, they had a series called Barbarians Rising. Barbarians Rising. This was back in 2015, and Nicholas Pinnock portrayed Hannibal Barca. Okay, and he did an excellent job portraying Hannibal Barca. History Channel's newest documentary series, Barbarians Rising, tackles the fall of Rome over the course of 700 years of invasions. However, the most recent episode that aired Monday depicts Hannibal of Carthage as a black man, which he was, and many white history buffs are crying foul over what they say is historical inaccuracy. In the series, Hannibal is portrayed by Black British actor Nicholas Pinnock. He did a fantastic job of it. I've posted this picture on our fan page, the African History Network, before also. Okay, so the famous Carthaginian Hannibal Barca was a thorn in the Roman Empire side. He became a general at the age of 26 and managed to unite barbarian tribes to stop Rome's imperial rise. The military genius was famous for climbing the Alps with war elephants whose sole purpose was to stomp the Roman Empire. Hannibal Barca ultimately wanted to invade Rome, but he failed to do so. Now, there have been debates over the race of Hannibal. This debate still continues till this day. It's not much of a debate, okay? The Carthaginians are descendants of the Phoenicians. Phoenicians are descendants of a larger group called the Garamantes. These are all African. These are Black African people. These are not Arabs. These are Black African people. Check out this article from AtlantaBlackStar.com from June 7th, 2016. It was 2016 that the series came out, Barbarians Rising. History Channel portrays Hannibal as Black. White people cry foul over historical revisionism. Okay. And Carthage, which exists from 813 BCE to 146 BCE, because Rome destroys Carthage. Okay. This is another African empire that Europeans try to claim as their own as well. Okay. So Carthage was founded in the 9th century BCE on the Gulf of Tunis. From the 6th century BCE, before the Common Era, or BC, from the 6th century BCE onwards, it developed into a great trading empire. Covering much of the Mediterranean, and was home to a brilliant civilization. In the course of the long Punic Wars, which exists from 264 BCE to 146 BCE, and we'll talk about the Punic Wars in class today. In the course of the long Punic Wars, Carthage occupied some of Rome's territories before finally being destroyed by its rival Rome in 146 BCE. Now, in his book, World's Great Men of Color, Volume 1, Joel Augustus Rogers, better known as J.A. Rogers, asserts that the Carthaginians were descendants of the Phoenicians, a Negroid people, and that, in fact, until the rise of the doctrine of white superiority, Hannibal Barca was traditionally known as a Black man. So when we see a rise in the European phenotype, and Europeans are coming out of the Dark Ages, going from the 1300s into the 1400s AD, Common Era. As they start to conquer people's lands and enslave people, extract the mineral wealth out of their land, Europe is starting to rebuild itself. Europe had lost 1/4 to 1/3 of their population to the Black Death, the bubonic plague that hits in spurts from 1347 to 1400. So as you have a rise in European powers, Spain and Portugal and France and Germany, England, things like this, as you have a rise in European powers, you have a rise in the dominance of European phenotypes. So Europeans start to reinterpret images that were traditionally African. They start to reinterpret those as European. They reinterpret the Black Madonna and Child as being European. Okay. And the Black Madonna and Child was worshipped all throughout Europe. And we know that comes from Asar, Aset, and Heru, okay, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. We see Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel, and he uses his aunt and uncle as the image of Adam and Eve, and he paints God as being white. We see Hercules was traditionally Black, traditionally African. He gets reinterpreted as being a European. We see Zeus. Zeus, in Greek mythology, Zeus is said to be the king of the gods, but they say Zeus comes from Ethiopia. Okay, he gets reinterpreted as a European. So we're going to see this take place when Europe comes out of the Dark Ages. All right, now, today, many encyclopedias classify the Carthaginians as whites or Semites, but ancient Greek and Roman eyewitness accounts paint a different picture. The indigenous peoples of Carthage were called the Afers, A-F-E-R-S, the Afers. Ancient Roman poet Virgil, in his poem Moretum, M-O-R-E-T-U-M, speaks of a woman from the Afar or Afar, A-F-A-R, or Afra, A-F-R-A, race. And he says of her, quote, and all her figure proves her native land. And all her figure proves her native land. Her hair was curly, thick her lips, and dark her hair color. Her hair was curly, thick her lips, and dark her hair color, unquote. Now, in Library of History book 20, Roman numeral 20, XX, Roman numeral 20, Greek historian Diodorus mentions a Greek lieutenant named Agathocles, who defeated a people in the area of present-day Tunisia who were the same hue as Ethiopians. The eyewitness accounts are corroborated by physical anthropology. L. Berthelon and E. Chantre, both well-noted French anthropologists, documented their examination of skeletons throughout North Africa in all periods. They note that the remains of both upper and lower class individuals of ancient North Africa were representative of the Negroid race. They note that the remains of both upper and lower class individuals of ancient North Africa were representative of the Negroid race. So these were Black African people. All right. So that deals with Carthage and the Carthaginians. And the Carthaginians are involved in the Punic Wars from about 264 to about 146 BC. Then we have the Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe. This is another African empire that Europeans tried to claim as their own. Now, the Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe existed from about 1220 Common Era CE or AD to 1450 Common Era. Okay. And how's everybody doing? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. How you like this type of information? Okay. Who still needs to register for our 10-week online class that I teach on Wednesdays? Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And what we're going to do is also we're going to have a new session of this class start up on Monday, November 29th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, Monday, November 28th, we're going to have a new session of this class start up Monday, November 28th. And so we're going to enroll you that's coming to an end of 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll enroll you in the new class for one price, for one cost, one admission, one registration cost. So you don't have to worry about paying for both classes. Okay. We'll post a link again here. You can register for the classes right now, and you can join us in class today, because we normally teach these 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. So we'll post a link here, and it's in the thread of the broadcast as well, in the description here of the broadcast. Okay, let's continue. We'll be here for a few more minutes. The civilization of Great Zimbabwe was one of the most significant civilizations during the medieval period. Great Zimbabwe is extraordinary because of the magnificent scale of its structures. Its most striking edifice, referred to as the Great Enclosure. The Great Enclosure has walls as high as 36 feet, extending approximately 820 feet. Walls as high as 36 feet, walls as high as 36 feet, extending approximately 820 feet. Okay. Making it the largest ancient structure south of the Sahara Desert. Now, in the 1800s, European explorers, imperialists, and colonizers were stunned by Great Zimbabwe's grandeur and cunning workmanship. So they attributed the architecture to Portuguese travelers, Arabs, Chinese, Persians, or even biblical characters, such as King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Okay, once again, don't want to give Africans credit for what we do. Okay, and this is what European colonizers and imperialists did. Now, according to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, archaeological investigations conducted during the first decades of the 20th century have dismissed those attributions and confirmed both the antiquity of the site and its African origins, The antiquity of the site and its African origins. It was built by the ancestors of the indigenous Shona people, okay, who are in Zimbabwe today, the Shona, okay. It was built by the ancestors of the indigenous Shona people in the 11th century, long before the first Europeans ever set foot in Zimbabwe. Okay, now, the last African empire that we'll look at is Numidia, not Namibia, okay, but Numidia, okay, which existed from 202 BCE to 46 BCE, before the Common Era. Now, Numidia was another great Black Berber Libyan nation in northern Algeria, Numidia. during the time of the Romans and the Carthaginians. Now, this is during the time of the Punic Wars. And we're going to see Numidia side with the Romans against the Carthaginians. Now, it began as a sovereign state and later alternated status between Roman province and Roman client state. It is considered to be the first major state in the history of Algeria and the Berber world. Now, Numidia has also been classified by European and Arab historians as a Caucasian or Semitic built civilization. European and Arab historians tried to claim Numidia as their own, saying it was a Caucasian or Semitic built civilization. However, in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, by Dr. Chancellor Williams, Dr. Chancellor Williams declared that Libya was once so nearly all Black that to be called a Libyan meant that one was Black. Okay? At one point, Libya was so Black that to be called a Libyan meant that one was Black. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing about Libya in his book Histories, book 4, stated, quote, "One thing I can add about this country, so far as one knows, it is inhabited by 4 races and 4 only, of which 2 of these races are indigenous. 2 are indigenous and 2 are not indigenous. The indigenous peoples are the Libyans and Ethiopians. The former referring to the Libyans, occupying the northerly and the latter the more southerly parts. The immigrants are the Phoenicians and the Greeks. The immigrants are the Phoenicians and the Greeks. Now, one of the most famous, end quote, now one of the most famous Berber Moors of the Roman times was Massinissa, 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 who was the king of Numidia. He lives from 238 BCE to 148 BCE. Now, Massinissa assisted the Romans against the Carthaginians during the Punic Wars. Okay, and when you study the Punic Wars, you read about this. We deal with this in the class. Now, this coin here depicts the coin depictions and statues of King Massinissa confirm without doubt that this great Berber leader and king of the Moors was phenotypically a Black African man with woolly hair, similar to the West African type. Now, Syphax, Syphax, king of the Massalinians, the Massalinians, Masaesylians, the Massalinians in Numidia, a contemporary and great rival of King Massinissa, was also depicted in his coinage as a phenotypically Black African. Now, this is a coin of Juba I, king of Numidia. He lived from 85 BCE to 46 BCE. He was the king of Numidia. This is the front and back of his coin. Okay, a coin depicting him, I should say. All right. So this is just a sample of some of the type of information we deal with in the 10-week online class that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We go through and look at thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we try to look at this history as much chronologically as we can. We can't start studying our history in slavery. There's some books that we reference also. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class. Some of the and these are different slides that we use in the course also. Some of the things that we deal with in the class, I'll show you this here. So we can't start studying our history and slavery, even when we study the transatlantic slave trade, which is important to study. We can't start in 1619 or in the 1440s when the Portuguese get involved. We have to understand the history chronologically and deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who enter into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD, okay, into North Africa in 711 AD. This course not only deals with the transatlantic slave trade, but we deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade of African people taking place. Now, August 20th, 2019 marked the 400th year anniversary of those 20 and odd Africans on the White Lion pirate ship coming into Virginia, okay? And in Point Comfort, coming into Point Comfort on August 20th, 1619 in Virginia. Now, that year, 2019, was known as the year of return, as many African Americans were reconnecting and still are reconnecting to Africa and traveling to Ghana and other West African countries. When we discuss the transatlantic slave trade, we have to first understand that African people are the original people of North, Central, and South America and have been in the land we call the United States of America, or what Native Americans call Turtle Island. We've been here in this land at least 51,700 years. Now, this does not mean that the transatlantic slave trade did not happen. It means that we were here for tens of thousands of years before the transatlantic slave trade happened. It did happen, but you have to understand the history before that. So some of the things we deal with in class: what was the transatlantic slave trade? What were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place? What role did Christopher Columbus play? Because Columbus is crucial to understanding the transatlantic slave trade and the spread of it. When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? Did Africans sell themselves into slavery? We deal with that complicated history. We deal with Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Links to ancient Kemet, Egypt, and early Christianity, Freemasonry, and the making of America. We look at work from Dr. David Imhotep, who's a friend of mine, who wrote the book, The First Americans, Where Africans Documented Evidence. And on page 14 of his book, he deals with a discovery in Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004, where Dr. Albert Goodyear and his team discovered 13 different types of evidence that thoroughly document an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago, at least 51,700 years ago. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, skull, skeleton, structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of evidence thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. And these were the Quisan, the short-statured Africans coming from Southern Africa that they were talking about. Now, this is an article from ScienceDaily.com, which is a scientific website. They have scientific discoveries there, archaeological discoveries. They have this article from November 18, 2004, that deals with Dr. Albert Goodyear's discovery. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Okay, so they give a summary of his discovery. All right, and what they say is radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains, where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear, indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. So you can go read that entire article that came out November 18th, 2004. And these different archaeological discoveries are coming out every other week. They're causing the scientists and archaeologists and paleontologists to push the timelines back. Okay. They keep having to push the timelines back. It's causing them to rethink everything. Now, in October 2012, genetic study published in Science magazine found that the Quisan in Southern Africa are the oldest ethnic group of modern humans, with their ancestral line originating about 100,000 years ago. The Quisan, formerly called by the derogatory term Bushmen, okay, the Quisan are genetically unique, and no other currently known population had separated so early from our common modern human ancestor, according to the report. Now, here's a picture of two Quisan women as well. Okay. All right. So we go throughout history and look at different archaeological discoveries that have come out recently, like this one here on the Greek island of Crete. In 2010, they found stone tools that date back 130,000 years ago, but Crete has been an island for more than 5 million years. And they're saying that this is strong evidence of sailing in the Mediterranean 130,000 years ago. And so these were African, these had to be African people. And this shows us sailing at least 130,000 years ago. We look at the lost city of Egypt. There are two lost cities of Egypt. Tanis Heraklion, that was built around 8th century BC, was swallowed into the sea, Tanis Heraklion. But then also Dazzling Aten, which was discovered in 2021. Okay, Dazzling Aten as well was another lost city. Okay. We'll look at this one. This was a good discovery here out of Morocco, where they found remains of Homo sapiens that date back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago, and this is over 100,000 years earlier than the remains that they had that came out of Ethiopia, that they said were the oldest remains of modern man, that they dated back 195,000 years ago. These here in Morocco date back between 300,000 to 350,000 years ago. Okay, and it shows we were migrating out of East Africa, the Nile Valley region of East Africa, much earlier than a lot of the archaeologists, etc., had previously thought. Okay, so we go through and we look at different civilizations. We go through and look at this history. We look at the African influence here in the U.S. We see the Washington Monument as an ancient African symbol called a tekken. The Greeks called it an obelisk. And we see tekkens in New York City, London, England. We see them in Paris, France. These are tekken for plural, that were taken from Africa. Ancient Egyptians called obelisks tekkenu, and they were also used to tell time in the past. Their pinnacles were basically covered in gold to reflect the sunlight. Historians say the obelisks represented immortality and eternity, and their long structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. Currently, Cleopatra's Needle is the name given to 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks, one in New York City, one in London, England, and one in Paris, France. However, they do not all come from one Egyptian site. The obelisks in New York and London are carved out of red granite from the quarries of Aswan, a major source of stone for Egyptian antiquities. The 2 obelisks were commissioned by Nesubiti or Pharaoh Thutmose III for the Temple of the Sun in Heliopolis, near modern-day Cairo, with each weighing about 224 tons and 68 feet tall. Check out this article from face-to-faceafrica.com called Cleopatra's Needle, how 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks ended up in New York City, London, England, and Paris, France. Okay. And then we deal with, of course, Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. We know there were at least 1,200 Tekenu built in ancient times in ancient Kemet, but there are only about a dozen or less than a dozen are found in Egypt today. Many of the Tekenu removed from Egypt are now in Istanbul, Turkey, London, England, Paris, France, Berlin, Germany, New York City, Rome, Italy, Vatican City, and elsewhere throughout the world. The Tekenu are now called obelisks by their new owners, and few know their origin or that they symbolize the resurrection of the African king Asar. This is from page 17 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. So we also deal with Freemasonry and the African influence on Freemasonry as well, and where those teachings come from. They come straight out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We deal with the Black Madonna and Child. Also, we look at some of the different Neteru, the different deities in ancient Kemet. We look at things like Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet. In Zwarte Piet, Black Pete was a Moor. So this deals with the history of the Moors in the Netherlands and Holland, but also in Spain as well. Okay. So this is just a brief overview of this 10-week online class. There's over 50 articles that we reference in the class. It's about 100 or so slides, something like that. With the slides, we also deal with the film Black Panther. Okay, we talk about that in the class because there's a lot of African influences that we see in the film Black Panther, and the Panther deity Bast comes from the Neter, the deity Bastet, the goddess Bastet out of ancient Kemet. And Bastet was an ancient Egyptian goddess worshipped in the form of a lioness and later a cat. She was a goddess of warfare in Lower Egypt, Lower Kemet. She was worshipped as early as the Second Dynasty, 2890 BCE. So we deal with that in Black Panther. Then we go through and we look at some of the history of the Moors as well, and who were the Moors, and the Moors going into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD. And they go in 710, led by Tarif, the General Tarif, for the reconnaissance mission, but then go on in 711 AD, led by Tariq ibn Ziyad. And we know where they landed in the Iberian Peninsula. They named the mountain Tariq's Mountain, Jebel Tariq, Tariq's Mountain, which we call Gibraltar. So when you hear about the Rock of Gibraltar, that is a mountain named after an African man, Tariq ibn Ziyad. Okay, and then we look at what leads to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We look at the Moors losing control of Spain and that last stronghold, Granada, January 2nd, 1492. We look at Christopher Columbus and how Columbus is crucial to understanding the spread of the transatlantic slave trade. And Columbus never came to the land we call the United States of America. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. But we're going to see Columbus is responsible for the decimation of 12 million to 25 million people. Right Reverend Bishop Bartholomew de las Casas, who traveled with Columbus on his voyages, some of his voyages, he estimated that Columbus was responsible for the murder of 12 million to 25 million indigenous people. Now, Dr. David M. Hotep, in the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, he talks about how 70% of the people Columbus encountered on his 4 voyages were African people. Okay, so then we go through and we look at and we see what leads to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, then we go through and analyze the transatlantic slave trade as well. All right, so this is a 10-week online class. We don't give any tests. We don't give any grades. You don't have to worry about that. But you're going to learn a lot in this class. How do you all like this type of information? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. How you like this type of information? Okay, you can use this with your children also. I would say the content is PG-13. It's not overly graphic. I don't do a lot of cursing or anything like that. The class is going to sell $60, regularly $130. We have the information right on the homepage of our website, TheAHNShow.com. It's also in the description of this broadcast. And we teach classes normally Wednesday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sunday and Tuesday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Wednesdays is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. We do the sessions live. Then all the sessions are archived and recorded. You can watch them on demand anytime. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. Then Tuesdays, I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And we start the class in the year 1800. And we look at history chronologically, look at that 868-year period of time, okay? So we have a bundle pack for both classes also. They're greatly discounted, so you can register for that here. We have the bundle pack, so just click on register here. You get both classes for $100. And we have a promotion coming up for Black Friday. It won't include the courses because the courses are already greatly discounted, but it includes my DVD lectures and digital downloads that we have at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So look out for that as well. Okay, if you want to support the African History Network, also $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. You can click on the links here, and it takes you to our QR code. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, broadcast our Sunday night show, the African History Network show on Sundays that I've been doing for 12 years, 6 years on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. Okay, so you can support us that way as well. Saturday, I will be at Pace Academy in Pace Academy in Southfield, Michigan. I'll be there for the pop-up shop that Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated is doing. My sisters at Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I'll be a vendor there. So it's taking place 12 noon to 6 p.m. We're going to put that on our homepage of our website, The African History Network. It's taking place 12 noon to 6 p.m. And I also posted it on my personal page. I need to post it on the African History Network fan page. Let me pull this up here. Where is this? Just a second. Let me pull this up here. Okay, this is taking place. This is for Small Business Saturday, Black Friday, and Small Business Saturday. It is taking place Saturday, November 26th. Okay, this right here. Let's flip over to this here. Black Friday pop-up shop, Saturday, November 26th, 12 noon to 6 p.m. Pace Academy, 23777 Southfield Road, 23777 Southfield Road, Southfield, Michigan. It's a free event, 12 noon to 6 p.m. Come on out, support the vendors. We'll have a vendor booth there also for the African History Network. So I'll have my DVD lectures, digital downloads, and also we have lectures now available on flash drive as well. So we put the lectures on a flash drive and you just load it onto your computer. So because a lot of people don't have DVD players today. So we have our lectures in DVD in digital download format and on flash drive also. Okay. All right. Look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. And register for the class.